I guess I should start. Can everybody hear? I just expected to see hundreds of faces. So I guess that has been disabled. I'm Sharon McDonald. I'm with the National Alliance to End Homelessness. Thank you all for joining me. And I am delighted to be here with my colleagues. Mary Frances, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mary Frances Kenyon. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based here in Southern Maryland, and I'm joined with both Sharon and Gina, who will introduce herself now.
Hi all, I'm Gina Davis. I'm the Director of Events and Meetings here, she, her pronouns, and I'm based here in DC. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to be monitoring the chat while these ladies go through what we want to talk about in terms of the webinar and how you all can get information about the Call for Proposals 2025. So Sharon, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. And largely we want to use this time to interact with folks who have a lot of questions. I don't think we're going to be saying anything in this particular webinar that you can't find in the application material, but we think that the dialogue could be really important. So if you go to the next slide, Mary Frances. We have opened up the call for presentations for our conference. This is the link in order to access the application material. We are encouraging submissions from individuals working in every sector in the homeless service system, including service leaders, frontline workers, people with lived experience, researchers, and others. Next slide. And just quickly, we're going to just cover the call for presentation, the submission overviews, eligibility, selection criteria, and timeline. Next slide. So the Alliance is seeking proposals offered by industry stakeholders that provide valuable insights, reflect diverse experiences, and demonstrate innovative approaches. Really, I was just saying to Mary Frances and Gina, some of the best sessions that I've attended in our conference over the last couple of years have been from call for proposals. And for every brilliant call for proposal session that we've seen, there's probably been about 8 to 10 to 12 to 14 to 20 that we couldn't make space for, much to our chagrin. The Alliance staff does the majority of the planning, creating some spaces and trajectories for call for proposals has been an innovation that's been kind of just a few years old now, but it's really allowed for some of the new practices, new approaches, new lessons being learned to elevate and to really show up and for providers to learn from one another who are doing interesting things. There are 3 types of session formats that we have at the conference, so I just want to share what those are really quickly. The innovation sessions are essentially your more traditional workshop format, so that's about 75 minutes long. Usually when I'm planning a conference, I tell people to spend 10 to 12 minutes each, so that the bulk of the time can be spent in interaction with the audience, because people want to talk. So even though you have 75 minutes, we would ask that you not present for 75 minutes. The spotlight sessions tends to be 1 speaker or maybe 2 speakers at the very most, but the spotlight sessions are shorter in that they're 45 minutes, but they're meant to provide an in-depth profile, a case study, sort of this is an innovation, this is a model, this is something that we're going to study in depth versus a panel presentation. And the last is transformation talks. And a lot of people don't necessarily opt for this, though I would encourage you to think about it. Transformation talks are 10 minutes, which might seem like that's too short of a time. But transformation talks are essentially 10 minutes is what we usually suggest workshop speakers take anyway. And there's a lot more slots to fill with transformation talks than there are in workshops and spotlights. And I do want to say it's been really competitive because there's such wonderful presentations and spotlights that we really wish we had more time, but not to the point where I want to give up a session on planning, I'm sorry to say. So we are in this session. I'm going to pause after this to see if my friends have anything to add. We're going to do two things. We're going to take the submissions. We're planning a conference for February, and the focus is exclusively on unsheltered homelessness. I think I veered off of this particular a slide, so I apologize. But so for the unsheltered conference, the focus has to be on unsheltered homelessness, and the deadline is Friday evening, October 25th, to be considered for that conference. But you are also welcome to submit proposals all the way through March 15th, and those sessions and those will be considered for our larger July conference in Washington, D.C. that will be held over the summer. When you apply for, when you submit a proposal, you could submit both for the Unsheltered Conference and the summer conference, or one or the other. But we're really only going to consider topics for the February conference, the Unsheltered Conference, that focuses on serving people who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. That's the point of that in-depth session. So far, Mary Frances, what have I left out?
I think that sums it up, but I did want to just kind of piggyback on what you said about how the staff at the Alliance does plan the sessions, and we do the bulk of, the, innovation sessions and spotlights. But would just add that we don't do that in a vacuum. We do have a number of advisory councils and boards, like our Capacity Building Network, Leadership Council, and Research Council and Research Network that we tap into. So that we have a good sense from different folks of what we might need to feature. But that's it.
Additionally, I want to add that we do also, because we want to incorporate voices and have diversity of thought, we do also do some co-created sessions with our persons with lived expertise. And so our staff members actually work with folks with lived expertise to create sessions as well. So we try to create a broad spectrum of thought and diversity in terms of expertise, where folks come from, region, state, all of that good stuff. So go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, and I just can't help myself but add on to that. Ever since I got here, and I got here a long time ago, I felt like the conference has been co-created with people we work with and partner all the time. People are certainly not shy, saying, you know what you need to be doing, and you should be doing this, and this isn't as helpful as this. So feel free to add your 2 cents into what we can be doing better. There's a lot of other people doing so. Next slide. Again, everything should be focused on unsheltered homelessness for the February conference. Next slide.
One thing to add on that, when we think about unsheltered homelessness, for whatever reason, I think we tend to think single adults, but just a reminder that there are a number of states, specifically in the Pacific Northwest, that have higher rates of families experiencing unsheltered homelessness. So when you're thinking about topics related to unsheltered homelessness, make sure that we're looking after our single adults, our transition age youth, young adults, and also families as well.
And newly arrived citizens. Thank you. Again, the submission criteria is here. The dates for the conference is, both of them are here. Keep going. Next slide. So eligibility, you should be the person that makes a submission, the author should be the proposed presenter. So don't, create a proposal for somebody else. Anybody with expertise, insights to share, are certainly welcome to apply, submit proposals. We particularly welcome proposals from people with lived experience of homelessness. And I will say that our audience is always been very, very interested in cutting edge research, like what's next, what are we learning in the field. really, one of the values of the call for proposal sessions, or the call for proposals, is really helping us identify some of the real emerging skills and techniques that are happening. And something that we're going to have an eye to is lessons that others in the audience can learn from and transfer to their own community. Next slide. If you must affirm when you apply that you have permission to attend the conference and speak about the session. We are asking people to provide a professional reference that we may follow up and just sort of get insight. Well, this is how it really plays out. Sometimes doesn't match up, so just help us to understand it. It's a way for us to kind of vet the presentations. And all presentations must occur in person at the conference. We cannot have you do a video event. And we are asking only non-federal folks, so the HUD TA providers, other TA providers under contract with the federal government shouldn't be applying to, shouldn't be submitting a proposal. They have other ways of getting their word out, and this is an opportunity to elevate people who normally don't have a flat platform to speak. Next slide. Okay, before I go to this slide, Mary Frances, Gina, anything else I missed on that last two pieces?
I just add that the non-federal affiliated folks oftentimes are tapped through our staff for our staff proposals and help with our staff stuff. So that's why we want to increase the opportunity for the community. And so it's not to exclude people, but really to try to open up the table so that we have the most amount of folks and the most amount of voices joining us in doing this.
And Sharon, we do have someone that just asked a question in our Q&A. So I'm going to ask if we can answer it live. The question is, will there be research poster presentation sessions at either of the conferences? For example, gallery walk style, or will all research projects be presented in the innovation spotlight or transformation formats?
We've never done the poster presentation style. I find it pretty intriguing, and it'd be fun to explore whether we could pull it off. Honestly, I did one when I was a student, and it was a great experience. But at the moment, we are not planning on doing that.
Nakia, that's a great question, because I was just having that conversation with the events planning team about posters and things of that nature. And a lot of folks have not seen that in the homelessness space. I came from the public health space, and we used to do that a lot. So it is on the table for future conversation. So it's very interesting that you should ask that. So stand by. Maybe you'll see it in the next conference.
And then we also got a question from Dean. Can we include a dialogue about older adults who are living in a shelter, or must it be living on the street? This focus is going to definitely be on unsheltered, but if you have something that you'd like to submit for our July conference, yes, absolutely.
And I think in the buckets, the application areas that you'll see, we're asking people to apply, as a subject matter. I think providing shelter, is a category that we're looking for submissions on. Rehousing people who are unsheltered is a category. So it does fit. We just are, starting from the population. The purpose of our West Coast Conference really started to, have a more narrow focus that allows us to go into greater depth in one particular subpopulation or in one kind of strategy that we weren't feeling was getting as much attention. So we used to focus on families when families were really an afterthought, and then youth, and then families and youth, and then single adults. And given unsheltered homelessness, we really wanted to predominantly focus on this population, but it's making shelter available to people who would otherwise be unsheltered, or making sure it's accessible to people who are typically unsheltered, things like that. So let me
And
just, I'm sorry.
Sharon, you want to go ahead and get through because we're getting a number of
No, that's,
questions.
yes, no, that's exactly what I was getting to do. So just very quickly, there's going to be a group of us, people from our capacity building team, our policy team. We're all going to sit together and go through all of these proposals, and I trust you, it is going to be ugly because we are going to have our favorites, but we're really going to look for the relevancy to unsheltered homelessness, the innovation in really being a solution that's transferable and something that will help inform and really is submitted by the deadline and meets the criteria. And again, we've been asked in the past, my proposal wasn't selected. What did I do wrong? There's such brilliant proposals that get selected. It's a very, I mean, that that are submitted, and we can't profile them all. They're really, so it's really a wonderful wonderful work that the field is doing, and it's an honor to be part of elevating it at our regular sessions as well as in ones that we learn about through the call for proposal process. I know you're going to add to that, Mary Frances, but I'll just finish this. Presenter requirements. Not next slide. So, if you're selected, you'll be asked to submit all the final presentation materials. You'll be expected to be available throughout the conference dates. We won't have the flexibility to say, oh, can I speak on Wednesday instead of Friday? There's too many other moving parts. And are responsible for their own conference-related expenses, which Gina probably will have to explain in detail what that means. And the last, so why don't I make that the first question, but first, the last slide here is the timeline, so that you have it all. And the slide deck will be available, as will the recording, but really we wanted the bulk of the time to be in question. Gina, can you expound on what that means? People will be responsible for their own conference expenses. What does that entail typically?
Sure. So if you are chosen, and when you are chosen and you are approved, you will get a call from one of our folks letting you know that you've been approved. And then in terms of your lodging and your airfare and all of those things, you are responsible for that. As a presenter, as a chosen presenter, you will receive free registration, which is an $885 value. And so that is that we just ask that you're prepared to do that before you register. Now, how you make that happen, sometimes if you work with an organization, they can assist you, or you can get a grant from an organization. We do offer scholarships for folks with lived experience, and you would fill out an application on our website, which is actually active now, the events website. And then there are a couple questions here. Karen asked if 2 or more people can present on a transformation talk. We don't advise it because it's 10 minutes and it's really hard to toss back and forth with a 10-minute presentation. And we like to keep those fluid. Think of those as TED Talks or his stories. We've done those in many different formats before. And so we really do encourage only one person. And then Nikia says, doesn't the conference expenses without waiver or support exclude people usually excluded from presentations? I'm not exactly sure what you're asking there.
I can take that one, Gina.
Go ahead.
I think she typed that right before you were talking about the complimentary registration for speakers that are selected, or call for presentation speakers that are selected. And then you kind of talked about the scholarship. We do have scholarships, but conferences are very costly to run. So those are limited. You will be submitting if someone is in need, someone that has lived experience of homelessness. You can check out the scholarship. I don't know, Gina, if you can pop the link to that in the chat for folks. But those are limited, and we do try to diversify who is coming to the conferences. So if you're a previous scholarship recipient before, you know, we like to make sure that folks that haven't had an opportunity to attend have the chance to do so. And again, those scholarships are limited. We do not, we are not similar to other organizations that might be able to provide everything for everyone, because we are a nonprofit organization. But Gina, you want to weigh in on anything else related to scholarships for Nakia, or anyone
Nope,
else in the
just
whole?
there is a specific criteria for our scholarships. I'm going to pop that the website, our website address for the events into the chat. The other thing that I wanted to say, a lot of people are asking, number one, about volunteers, number two, about the number of folks who can speak. So let me go to that first. Typically, we ask a spotlight 1 to 2 presenters, because we want that to be a really in-depth conversation. Innovations, we ask for 3 speakers, no more than 3, and a moderator if necessary, because for the time, just from a presentation standpoint and a learning standpoint, to have too many people on the stage, then everybody's got 5 minutes. You really don't have an opportunity to get your point across. And then secondarily, a lot of folks have asked us in the past that they want information that they can take home and replicate, and information that's really some hands-on tools. And so we think that by limiting the number of speakers, we can really get down and dirty about some of those actual activities that people can go home and try to do in their own communities. And then let's see. I'm putting in to our website now, so you can go on and you'll see there are all sections. In terms of volunteering, we are taking volunteers. We do take volunteers. Volunteers get free registration. They too have to take care of their own lodging and travel, but you can fill out the application online, and we take anywhere between 40 and 60, depending on how large the conference is. This one has about 1,500 people, so we'll take about 40 to 45. So if you can go to the website, and you'll see we've got it all laid out there for you in different sections, so you'll be able to see. And there's also a frequently asked questions there for you. If you don't see what you need under the frequently asked questions, there is our email address, conferences@naeh.org, where you can ask further and more in-depth questions. Next question is, need of permanent supportive housing directly from homelessness and IDD individuals with development disabilities. Not sure what that question, that's not really a question, but next question. Would a presentation on support services partnering with property owners and management for PSH for people who are experiencing chronic homeless, have a serious mental illness diagnosis, and be an appropriate submission? Would it fall under sheltering response or key partners? More likely, I would say key partners. What do you think, Sharon?
I wouldn't have it be a shelter. It would either be a rehousing or key partners. People are asking questions like, does this count and could this count? The purpose of the conference, the umbrella purpose of this conference, is people in communities are struggling with people who are outdoors. They're in the woods, they're in the city streets, they are outdoors. They may be in vehicles, they are in places not intended for human habitations, and garages and storage units. It's a humanitarian crisis. All of homelessness is, of course. So the focus is, when you're doing presentations or submitting proposals for this conference, is what I have to share useful to localities right now in supporting the solutions to unsheltered homelessness? Is it giving them guidance in what to do? So kind of making PSH stronger could be, so that it is a viable housing placement for people coming directly off the street, but the focus is on how you're making it work directly off the street, as opposed to creating a kind of a robust long-term residents, if that makes it at any sense. Hopefully that does.
Next question, Bethany asks, do you consider unsheltered to be those who are living in cars and or those who are doubled up in dwellings that are inadequate? Yes, we do. Yes, on both of those accounts.
If it's not intended for human habitation is it's what we do.
Okay.
We've got another Q&A question here. Is there space for self-advocacy skills and methods being taught for the unhoused community? For example, coaching, organizing, advocacy skills, etc. The idea is that they can be for practitioners to teach community members or directly to community members.
Yeah, I think one of the sessions that's, I don't know if I'm supposed to provide sneak peeks, but one of the sessions I know that is being organized is around building advocacy skills across your sector. And so that means not just the CEOs, but the staff and the volunteers and the people with lived experience. So there's several advocacy sessions where we do try and diversify our content. So there's definitely content that would be of greatest interest to people with who are running homeless service systems and people who are largely doing outreach and peer support work and people with lived experience. So we're trying to make it a conference useful to everyone.
And then I just
on the front line.
Thank you for that, Sharon. I just scrolled up because we missed a couple of questions. Does the July conference have a theme yet?
I mean, I'll do that one. The July, so the Alliance is, I'm old enough for this part. The Alliance started the West Coast Conference to really do deeper dives into a particular subject matter, an aspect of homelessness. Our July conference is larger in scope, and it covers all populations and all issues. So that's going to be where we're more likely to talk about prevention and all sorts of rehousing strategies. So unsheltered homelessness will come up there, but it will not be a predominant focus.
And Nakia, I see you have your hand raised, but unfortunately, participant attendee videos and audio are muted, so you're not able to come off of mute. But feel free to use the Q&A chat if you have a question.
Also, just to kind of circle back to some things, I'm not seeing all the questions, but I do want to say that the conference is not a fundraising venture for the Alliance. So there is efforts to, break even for sure. And there is definitely money that gets, people's registration, honestly, will, and different sponsored tables will help subsidize the cost of bringing people with lived experience or people who require scholarships, but it's they're not cheap ventures. It would be lovely to do this, and I actually not going to be terribly defensive, but I spend a lot of my work here on conference every year, and I find it to be a fantastic way of transferring knowledge and building community and people learning that it's safe to try new things. We at the Alliance can say, what you should do, and rapid rehousing, lowering barriers to shelter. We can say, here's what you should do until the cows come home. But it's hearing it from practitioners. You know what? We did this and it worked. And you to be in a room saying, but what about this? And how about this? And how did you overcome that? This is where people find their network of folks to learn from and to sort of get the kind of the tools to go back home and talk to the CEOs or talk to the mayors or talk to the fundraisers to say, we need to go in this direction. This is the right way. So I absolutely think it's a very worthwhile endeavor.
And I would second that because before I became an Alliance staff, I was a conference attendee year over year. And that's where I was able to absorb a whole lot of information and resources, and most importantly, connections to my peers working in the field that were, innovating and being creative on preventing and ending homelessness. So, um, 10 out of 10 recommend conference attendance so that you can do that networking, so you can take information back to your communities, so that we can make sure that we're focused on preventing and ending homelessness.
And if I could add one thing, the Alliance conference would be nothing. Sorry, Gina. Gina does brilliant work, but it would be nothing without really generous people, like people who are in
Absolutely
the
right.
hall, people who are running organizations, people who are running COCs, community leaders. It's amazing how much they're very, 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 very busy, but they take the time out to teach or just share. Here's what we tried and here's what worked, or here's what we tried and this didn't work, and here's what we are so very dependent on people like those of you in this call who are not only willing to do the work every day, and we know that's a hard job, but willing to say, you know what, I'm going to come and take time out of my day and take time out of my organization to share what I've learned with others. So, I mean, it's the people in the audience who make, our partners. It's our local partners who make what I think is a pretty good conference, a pretty good conference.
Yeah, no need to apologize to me. I'm only the facilitator to make it happen. My whole goal is to present a space where you all can connect and exchange information and learn. I know that before I was an event planner and I worked in social services on the ground in the South, I would come to these conferences myself, and much like Mayor Francis, meet with colleagues, learn what folks are doing around the region, around the country, and get different ideas that we didn't have, just simply because we didn't know people were doing them. So it's always a good way to find out what's happening outside of your region. We tend to be in our own bubbles these days, and with social media and everything, we tend to get all of our information fed to us. So this is a way to for all of us. I always say to our staff here, it's our way to get to have conversation with you without the filter of Zoom or anything else. It's face-to-face conversation and community, and energy, and hopefully energy.
So a couple of other questions. Gina, this one's for you. Where can I attach the documents? I don't see a place to do that on the submission form. Is there an email? Oh,
So we won't need your documents. What we need you to do, and I'm sorry, I may have misinterpreted a question that was asked in the chat box. So we won't need your materials until after we have selected you. We don't want you to put in a whole lot of work unless you've been selected. We realize how much work this is for you to do. You're going to fill out the application, enter in all of the pieces of conversation that you have for us, answering the questions that we have for you. We will then, as a committee, sit down, go through them, sort through them, make some choices. We will come down, we will call and talk with you all about what your intent for presentation is. And then we'll do a reference check. And then after that, we will then select. It's at that point that you would provide us your PowerPoints or any of your documentation. So that hopefully that will help you. Go ahead.
Our next question, and this is a great question. Brandy is saying that they're seeing on the website, conference attendees are generally service providers, system leaders, advocates, and people with lived experience, but curious, as they've never attended, the proportion of these attendee types, like is it majority of providers? Are health plans attending state officials, counties, or does that happen at a different type of conference? We have a little bit of everybody. There are county, city officials, there are state governments from housing finance agencies. We actually had a large group of law enforcement officers at our last conference. We have people that are from HHS. We have folks from other federal agencies like Housing and Urban Development, U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. We do typically curate some content around Medicaid 1115 waivers in the past. It is a really great mix from all across the country, not just the lower 58. We have folks from Alaska, we've had folks from Guam and Hawaii and the other territories, and even some international folks. So it's a great opportunity to connect with folks beyond just service providers, system leaders, advocates. There's also my people, technical assistance providers and consultants that are in the building that may not be representing a specific community, but have worked in a number of communities throughout the country and are often a great resource in what I affectionately call as the hallway trapped. Hope that answers your question. Next question from Gary. The conference will have breakaway classes like going on all at the same time. Yes, so all of these sessions, you do have to pick from a number of sessions. There are time slots, there are breaks in between, there are networking events. There are also lunch plenaries, which feature, folks from within our field, including our own CEO, who is Anna Leva, as well as some other Alliance staff, and usually special guests, sometimes elected officials. So there's just a range of activities, workshops, and things for you to do while you're at the conference. Next question I'm seeing here. Can the reference be someone from the agency where you work? Yes, absolutely.
One of the biggest reasons why we've started asking for that is because we accepted a few proposals last time, and we had folks whose organizations didn't know they had submitted, and then they were not allowed to come. So we just want to make sure that the organization you're working with or representing is in agreement that you can come, so that we don't waste your time or ours in terms of selection, but also we don't want to find out late that you can't come and then have an empty hole. So that's what that's about. But yes, your reference can be someone who has heard you speak before, someone within the organization you're working with. If you're connected to your COC, that's great to know. So any of those folks who are working with you while you do your wonderful work, we would love to hear from.
All right, next question from Nakia. Do we gauge or weigh presenters that have attended NCH and LIHC, HGN, et cetera, to provide opportunities to those that aren't often at the proverbial table? I'm not sure that we are able to, because that's not a criteria that we currently assess. We don't assess who has attended those other conference or networking opportunities, but that's certainly something that we might consider in the future. Sharon, Gina, do you have any other thoughts to add? Thank you, Nakia.
No, I think people who have done that in the past should, certainly submit. We are taking a lot of steps to bring people with lived experience to the conference and ensure they're part of designing sessions and with our co-created sessions. So, so I don't know that we would go externally to do what we really want to do internally inside with our alliance partners. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I made a note. It's something for us to consider. Thank you for the suggestion. Next.
We don't have any other questions right now.
So
last call for questions.
And I'll just say that I think most of our email addresses are pretty accessible. So you can please feel free to reach out.
Again, if you go to the frequently asked questions, if it's specifically about this conference and about the call for proposals, I'd ask you to write the conferences box so they all come in one place. If you wanted to talk with a specific staff member about their department, within their department, then email them directly. But for conference, just so we track the questions, so that we can make sure that we're meeting people's needs and we're trying to be accessible and inclusive, but also just so we can make sure that we hit all the points. So if, again, it's conference at naeh.org, and you can find that email and the rest of the emails that have to do with conference on the website, on the events website, and I put that link in. I will put it in the chat again, just so you all have it. And again, one more thing, just as a reminder, we will be sending out this PowerPoint presentation to those who registered for this webinar.
Thanks to everybody for considering sending us a proposal. They've just been fantastic to learn from and to feature. So we're really, really grateful for your partnership.
We really are, and thank you so much for taking the time. It's always you know, if you've met me before, you hear me always say it's something to throw a party and worry about nobody showing up. So we're always glad when people show up.
All right. Thanks, folks. Have a great day.
We're going to give you 1 minute so that you can collect that, the links that are in the chat if you'd like. And thank you very much. And feel free to reach out to us. The last link I put in is for the frequently asked questions. So feel free to tap into that. And then that way you'll get the conference email box. And then that goes directly to me and Teresa, our events associate, and we will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you all.